In this video, I'll show two Web Sketchpad activities in which students think about and make use of rotations to create attractive geometric designs. You'll find these activities in the accompanying Sign of the Times blog post. The link to that post is provided below the video. Here we have a penguin and a frog. The penguin is moving along this orange arm of a star. The frog's motion and path is determined by the penguin's path. In particular, the frog is a rotation of the penguin, whose center of rotation is point C, and whose angle of rotation is theta. I can drag either point C or angle theta to change the path of the frog. I'd like the frog to trace the remaining 3 arms of the star. How can I do it? Well, one way is I can drag point C to the center of the star, so that will be the center of my rotation, and I'll change angle theta. Let's see, I will make it there. I'll make it 90 degrees. So now the frog is a 90-degree rotation of the penguin, with the center of rotation being point C. So now I will press Turn Tracing on, and the frog traces my arm of the star. Now I'm going to change the angle of rotation, but before I do so, I'll turn tracing off, and now I'll change the angle to, let's see, 180, and I'll turn tracing back on to trace the next arm of the star, and I can continue to trace the remaining arm. Now in this example, I've used the center of the star as the center of rotation, but you don't need to do that. You can also try locations for point C that are not at the center of the star, and I would recommend trying those and seeing what you find. On the remaining pages of this web sketch, you'll see other stars for you to trace with the frog. And on the third and final page, there's a new star button, which will generate even more stars to trace. Here is the second of our 2 Web Sketchpad rotation activities, where again the goal is to trace the arms of stars, but now we don't have a penguin and frog in place already. In fact, we have to build the rotation ourselves from scratch using the 3 tools provided for us. First, let's take a look at what we have. We have a point which, when I drag it, moves along one arm of the star, much the way the penguin did in our prior activity. To set this point in motion, I can either drag it or use the Animate tool. If I tap the Animate tool, I get a preview of a point and an Animate button, and the Animate button will animate this point. Well, this point is glowing, indicating that I need to place it somewhere. And I, in particular, would like to animate this point, which will move along the arm of my star. So I'll tap this point to attach these 2 points together. And there. My tool is done. I now have an Animate button, and when I press it, notice that this point moves along the arm of the star, much the way the penguin did. I will stop that animation for now, and now I'd like to create a point that moves along this next arm of the star here. That's a 60-degree rotation of this first arm, with this as the center point. So to do so, first I will create an angle slider. I'll tap the Angle tool, and I'll tap anywhere to place this glowing point, and I'll just drag this angle below the slider, And what I have here is a slider that shows angles that vary from 60 degrees all the way up to 360. So I'll use that for my rotation. And to actually rotate this point, I will tap the Rotate tool. I now see a preview of the rotation I'm about to do. This is the point that's going to get rotated, the point here that's glowing. This is the center of my rotation, the angle of my rotation, and the result of rotating this point right here. So what point would I like to rotate? Well, I'd like to rotate this point. So let's tap it to attach these 2 points. Okay, next, where is the center of my rotation? Well, I'm going to pick the center of my star. And finally, I'd like the angle of my rotation to be controlled by this circular slider, so I'm going to tap 100 degrees to attach these 2 values together. Now I see my rotation is done. Here's my center. This is my pre-image. Here's my image. And if I drag this point to change the angle of rotation, I can see my blue point move accordingly. So I'm going to set this to be 60 degrees for my angle of rotation. And when I press animate to animate this point, the red point, the blue point will move as well. And I'll turn tracing on now. And here is my second arm of the star traced. I'll now turn tracing off, and I will stop my animation. So now I'd like to construct the remaining arms of my star to trace those. And there are 2 ways I could do it. I could again start with this red point as my pre-image, and I could rotate it by, well, 120 degrees. Or I could do something else. I could take this point here, which was the result of rotating my red point by 60 degrees, and I could rotate it by 60 degrees. So I could do a composition of 2 rotations to obtain this next arm of the star. So let's try that. I'll tap the Rotate tool. This will be now my pre-image point. My center remains the same. And my angle of rotation is, well, again, 60 degrees, so I'll tap that. So here's the second branch of my star. I'll turn tracing on, and I'll animate. And now I see I've traced 3 of the arms of my star. If I had wanted to rotate this original point by 120 degrees, I could do that. I could first create another angle slider and set that value to 120 degrees. So the remaining pages of this web sketch provide different stars. Here I have to take the extra step of dragging this segment to match up with one arm of my star. Here and on other pages I can press New Design to obtain different patterns. And on this page, to begin, I could drag these 2 attached segments to match these 2 sides of my star. And if I animate this point, notice that it moves along both segments, which will make it easier for you when constructing the remaining arms of your star.